Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll look at 7 Reddit's darkest revenge stories. And if you like them, you can like, comment, and turn on notifications so you don't miss new videos. Today's stories comes from the r/revenge stories and r/pro-revenge subreddits. Grab some snacks and your favorite drink, and let's get started. First off, the backstory. This took place in the early days of the interwebs, around the autumn of 1999, when HTML-coded chats became very popular. For you young, these spaces would be considered a pinnacle of free online speech today, as they were 100% unmoderated and they didn't log any personal data or that you registered an account. It was extremely basic to use, as you just had to write what your session screen name was, and that was it. So anyone who wanted to be a creep, abusive, or toxic could do this without any real-life consequence, which led to a lot of unwanted contacts. Their method was basically to use the whisper function, aka old-school DM, where you still wrote in the group chat, but only the recipient could see it. Especially girls and young women were targeted, and although these chats didn't support any images, it was pretty common to exchange email addresses to keep in touch. So, strange as it may seem, the low-pixel dick pic was received. This meant that we users needs to figure out ways to self-moderate the chats. The most common way to protect ourselves was to create online communities on a separate website, often using the name of the particular chat room where you hanged out. Ours was named the Attic, for example. As this was before the use of registration, a membership would be granted if you were active and endorsed by another member. We had member lists containing our nicknames, a bulletin where we warned about known creeps, lists on how to behave, early netiquette, and other ways to support each other. An example on how we could make a creep leave the chat was to coordinate in the chat and send hundreds of whisper messages using Ctrl+V, flooding their screen with wall of repetitive text that only they could see. 95% of the creeps gave up, as their connection would suffer. Our attic was known as the safest place among these chat rooms. Some creeps, though, were a bit more slippery and still managed to trick victims to share personal info. So it was a constant battle to come up with new, different, and often very creative and funny ways to combat these creeps. Now, let me present the actors in the story. I, male 20, met my then girlfriend, female 21, through a physical meetup that was organized by this specific community. We would meet up once or twice per year, traveling from all over the country just to meet up and then hang around for a weekend, partying or doing fun stuff at amusement parks or other places. My girlfriend was one of the first members in this community and was a well-known user in the chat for being really tough and creative when dealing with creeps. A standing joke was that she was more evil than the devil. Now, for the pro-revenge part. The creep in question, let's call him Farmer Bob, was one of the creeps who was a bit slippery. He managed to become a member without any of us suspecting a thing. His creepiness was very low-key, and only after some of the younger members started to report getting emails and unwanted messages, me and girlfriend decided to act. We started out by her pretending to be a naive and new user, and we managed to get him interested. After some back and forth, we managed to get some basic info about him and even some personal info. For example, we learned that he was living in the rural areas of the country, and he claimed to be wealthy as he owned a cattle farm, hence Farmer Bob. We soon realized that he was extremely stupid, seeming to be lacking in both social skills and basic education. He bragged about always wearing wooden shoes and how the females loved to be fucked by him while wearing them. After some more back and forth, my girlfriend got bored and decided to just fuck it. Let's just go all in. So my girlfriend pretended to be interested in maybe hooking up, but only if he could offer some cocaine, as it always made her super horny. To our surprise, he took the bait and that he couldn't afford it, despite bragging about being a wealthy cattle farmer just an hour earlier. He also slipped by telling her that his parents would be out of town the coming weekend. Dude literally forgot that he had claimed to be the owner of the bloody farm. Anyway, girlfriend felt that she wanted to just exaggerate the crap out of him and wrote something like, "But Farmer Bob, didn't you know that if you mix 3 parts baking soda with 1 part vanilla sugar, then you would get a rush equal to a cocaine rush, but with a nice aftertaste? It's also way cheaper." We thought this was so over the top that the game would be up and that he would finally realize that girlfriend was just trolling by now. Instead, he told us that he had forgotten about that DIY cocaine trick and thanked girlfriend for reminding him about it. Girlfriend convinced him that he had to be sure to make a batch before she booked a train ticket, and he had to make sure it was of good quality. He promised her that he would make a batch right away and try it out later that evening, and we logged out. Fast forward a couple of days, believing him to have realized that girlfriend had been trolling him, we got an email written in all caps. It was something like, "You made my nose bleed, you bitch. I had to visit a clinic because of you." He was so furious and accused her of tricking him. No shit, Sherlock. But wait, my fellow Redditors. This wasn't even the best part. We not only managed to somehow convince him that he must have gotten the mix wrong, we made an outlandish claim that she used this DIY nose candy all the time in her side gig, which was to produce and star in German amateur spanking pornos that she sold to tourists from all over Europe. To prove this, we recorded an extremely stupid and blatantly obvious fake trailer for our big hit Spankin' Main Sheep. My girlfriend's younger brother asked for him and his friend to star in it. So the scene is her bed, her brother, pretending to be random dude, sitting there with his friend laying on his stomach over his lap, both fully dressed, and pretending to be my girlfriend, as he had long curly hair. Using a wooden spatula, he simulated spanking him while I stood behind the camera and clapping wet hands to create a sloppy spanking. To top it off, me and girlfriend shouted German-sounding nonsense, and they mimed their mouths. The quality of the video was horrendous, but the low resolution and frame rate actually created a believable trailer. It was still extremely silly and over the top and should have been apparently fake to everyone. Not to Farmer Bob, though. He was totally convinced this was the genuine thing and begged us to sell him some films. We agreed to do so, but only if he tried the homemade cocaine again. We never heard from him again after that. I'm guessing he finally realized it was all fake. He might have kept creeping in the chat room, but using another name. We never got another report with his email, though. And yes, this is a true story. The trailer was unfortunately on an external hard drive that broke 7 years ago. I hope to be able to extract it someday, but until then, you have my word of honor that this is a true story. When I was a young man of just 18, I got a job in the Canadian oil patch. It was my first real job. It was the early 2000s, and this paid $20 an hour with no experience or education required. Min wage was sub $6. It was called well testing. Basically, you hook up a closed-pressure tank and flare stack to new oil and gas wells, then flow them, gather data for the oil barons. It's hard work setting up and tearing down, but the rest is recording gauges and computer work. Not bad for first job, except for fucking Gary. You work 2-man 12-hour or 4-man 24-hour crews, 1 labor and 1 supervisor shift. I was paired with a mean-spirited alcoholic in his mid-50s named Gary. He was overweight and lazy, only helping with things too heavy to lift on my own, like 250 pounds pipes. He spent his days in the trailer for the most part anyway, watching DVDs, napping, and hourly typing a bit of data into a PC. He also liked picking on me with jokes read, insults. I'm not a small man, about 6 feet 1 inch in heels. He was noticeably smaller, yet while not physically intimidated, back then I lacked confidence and have a baby face. I got called stupid a lot. When he found out I had never used a power drill, he asked me, "Didn't your dad teach you anything?" I made the error of telling him my dad was only in my life a handful of years. The next time I made a mistake, he quipped, "No wonder my dad walked out on me." I did call him out on that. Like every other asshole alive, he'd tell me I couldn't take a joke. We always worked far out of town in the country. I often had to eat dinner with him in small town restaurants. Mostly bars if we could help it. He drank a lot, could actually be personable when not at work, and he was at least too deep. He didn't stop and drank every night. It quickly became the case that I drove us to work in his truck. He made $1 or $1.10 per kilometer, and we could drive 100 to 350 kilometers per day, every day for weeks. 100 miles, it's 160 kilometers for your information. I got minimum wage for travel time. He was hungover most mornings, didn't want to drive, and told me he was boss. He slept like a gin-bloated corpse until we got to work. I worked with him for 3 months. 3 months of demeaning treatment and verbal abuse. I don't react much. It's still true, everyone has their breaking point. I was very used to bullying by then. Long story, I just get silent. I also needed the job. I don't anything until I do, and I don't do nothing forever. Part 1. The power of love. The first step in my quest for vengeance was remembering that it's impossible to defeat evil with the power of love. Part 2. The power of terror. One night while we out of town on a job, during dinner, I mentioned to Gary it's pretty lame he sleeps most of the time while I drive his truck, and he gets paid. Maybe he ought to kick a few bucks my way for the effort. He didn't like my suggestion he'd be generous. The last hinge must have crumbled because he came unglued. More verbal abuse, and I was young. It actually reduced me to angry tears. When he threatened my job, it was a bad feeling. So I resolved to at least get away from him. I've been taking notes because I wanted a different crew anyway. My breaking point was achieved. This is usually when my instinct for self-preservation diminishes and impulsive thoughts have fewer safeguards. I wanted to go home. Not revenge, but serendipity delivered the next morning. Gary was once again in his travel coma, and I drove us to work. About 30 kilometers from site of the highway on a pullout was a semi-truck. Luck would also have it, it was running and trucker was outside his rig. I quickly formulated a plan. Gary always needed to be woken with intent, so he didn't stir when I stopped, got out, and asked the friendly driver for a favor. Trucker man agreed to my terms, got back in his semi to await the signal. Gary, blissfully sleeping off the last of his nightly whiskey, also failed to notice when I maneuvered his truck. Parking it, we were nearly bumper to bumper, facing the big, beautiful Peterbilt. I lit the beacon. The truckers of Rohan answered with their own headlights. Like the horn of Helm Hammerhand sounding in the deep, the trucker hit his air horn with amazing commitment to instilling fear. I did my part by honking Gary's truck gleefully in respite and screaming my ass off. I cried bloody murder at blast level and yelled, "Fuck, we're gonna die," striking like a battalion of bombers singing a chorus of fire. The glorious cacophony lasted less than a minute. When it hit him, Gary dented the ceiling. Good thing he's thick as cement, or that might have hurt. He rocketed up with such force because the amount of shit he rapidly expelled into his pants kept him in debt to his own bowels until retirement. The wonderful sound of his anguished howls segued quickly into apoplexy and rage. While coming to terms with what I had done, he couldn't correctly choke out his death threats. I reversed, peeled off before he decided to get out to make good, and gave the trucker a wave. I got about 10 down the road when Gary felt the need to tell me he had dangerously high blood pressure and I could have killed him with a stroke. About 4 years later, I went to paramedic school. So yes, in hindsight, I agree with his assessment. Sucks for him at 18, I had legitimately no idea what a stroke was. What would I even do? Probably ignore him like they did with Stalin. I think he was just extra hungover or being lazier than usual by pretending half his body was paralyzed, dead. I started laughing and told him he should probably calm down then. I said, "Can't you take a joke?" He kept making incomplete threats, and I just couldn't stop laughing, making it even funnier when he wouldn't shut up. Don't feed it, Gary. I love ugly laughing at angry people. I was a hyena. He was fighting the urge to kill me and the desire to not stroke out simultaneously. The struggle was real. It took about 20 minutes more to get to site. That dance continued the whole time. I even asked him if that was his normal shade of red. Arriving, he ordered me to get out, said I was fired, then stomped off to go call the company owner. Oh, whatever. I had intermittent chuckles and smoked cigarettes while savoring my Pyrrhic victory for the 4 hours it took the company owner to come pick me up. It was a medium-sized business, about 100 employees. He was the general manager as well. I got some details. Gary wanted to involve the cops for attempted murder. Boss dissuaded him. Gary told one hell of a tale that left me looking like Satan. So, I told him all about the necessity of Gary's punishment on the way back to the city. He had a good chuckle about it. He was actually a decent guy. I worked for him until I went back to school. I got moved to a different crew where I could be the lone sociopath. That's about it. I did get some street cred with the rest of the boys at the company. I was 28, and the plan was simple because I needed it to stay simple. My best friend had been with her partner for years. Another girl had been dating his mate just as long, and I kept ending up at their gallery openings and pub gigs because I did not want my friends left alone in those rooms. We had been told we would love Sandra, this 48-year-old woman in the men's artist circle, and after 2 years of her blocking chairs, cutting us off, mocking us, and making every girlfriend look jealous for noticing, I decided to send one glitter envelope to her studio and call that revenge. Sandra never did anything big enough to make people gasp. She went silent when the men left the table, then lit up when they returned. She laid her arm across empty seats so women could not join, then acted confused when anyone asked her to move. She repeated our words in a nasty little voice, just loud enough for a laugh, then looked innocent before the laugh settled. If you called her out, you became difficult, insecure, dramatic, or whatever word keeps women quiet. My friend noticed first because Sandra wanted her gone most. Her partner kept saying he had not noticed anything, and she kept swallowing it because every argument made her sound jealous. Another girl went through the same thing until she stopped begging her boyfriend to see what happened right in front of him. Sandra had group chats with the men on every app and treated the girlfriends like clutter. The night I snapped was at a warehouse opening that smelled like beer and wet paint. Sandra wore a long black coat, even though the room was boiling. She kissed every man and gave us that tight little smile people use when they step around dog shit. My friend tried to stand beside her partner, and Sandra slid between them without even looking down. I said something harmless about the show, and Sandra repeated it back in this childish bitch voice that made 2 people laugh before they realized I was still there. I asked why she always did that to us, and the room went quiet in that awful way rooms do when cowards smell conflict. Sandra said she had no idea what I meant. My friend's partner lifted his hand like I was drunk and dangerous, then said this was not the place. Sandra smiled at me, and I knew she had turned my anger into the problem. The glitter envelopes started as a joke after that. We sent links and laughed harder than it deserved because we were exhausted. I ordered one online, used no real sender name, and sent it to the studio address she used for commissions. I wrote one sentence on the note. People notice more than you think. It was childish, but sometimes childish is all you have left when nobody lets you be angry like an adult. 3 days later, my friend rang me, crying so hard I barely understood her. Sandra had posted a photo into one of the men's chats and deleted it instantly, but the notification stayed on my friend's partner's laptop. The photo was my hallway, with my bin umbrella by the door and silver glitter smeared across the mat. I had never opened the glitter envelope. It had been signed for at Sandra's studio. Nobody in that group had a key to my flat, and my landlord swore nobody had been inside. Then the same glitter started appearing around the others. One girl found it in the zip pocket of her handbag, where she kept her keys. Another found it inside the hood of a coat she had not worn out. My friend found a clean line of it across her pillowcase, straight as if someone had dragged one careful finger over the fabric while she slept beside the man who still called Sandra harmless. I went to Sandra's studio because fear makes you dumb, and anger makes dumb feel righteous. The building was an old factory with a keypad door, and I slipped in behind a courier. Her studio door was open a crack, and music played low inside. At first her wall looked like normal art scene rubbish. Then I realized the men were pinned up whole, smiling, with dates written beside them. The women were different. Our faces had been scratched out, cut off, covered with silver pen, or replaced with blank ovals for magazines. My friend's mouth had been sliced away. Mine had a red line under it, and beside it Sandra had written "mouth first." On the table were envelopes with our names and addresses. Mine had my flat number, my workplace, and a note about what time I usually got home. Beside it sat a blue plastic key tag from the same letting agency I used. I took photos, but my hand shook so badly most came out blurred. I grabbed my envelope because I needed something nobody could explain into dust. Sandra came in before I reached the door. She did not scream or look shocked, which scared me more than screaming would have. She just stood there in that black coat, annoyed that I had touched her things. I asked why she had my address, why there was glitter in my flat, and why she had pictures of our faces cut up. She sighed and said women like us always came in smiling and slowly took the room. I told her I was calling the police. She laughed once and moved before I could step around her. She grabbed my hair and drove me into the work table hard enough to knock jars across the floor. A box of glitter burst under my foot, and silver dust jumped into the air. I kicked backward until my heel cracked against her shin, then ran with the envelope crushed against my ribs. By the time police reached the studio, the wall was gone and the table was clean. Sandra had the glitter envelope, my stupid note, and a calm face. I had a bruised hip, a blurred photo, and a story that sounded insane when spoken out loud. After that, Sandra became the victim before I even got home. She posted about younger women who weaponize insecurity and stalk older women with influence. She never named me, because naming me would have been less effective. Everyone knew anyway, and the men went quiet. The last envelope appeared in my kitchen drawer under the tea towels. It had no stamp, no address, just my first name written across the front. Inside was a cutout of my own mouth from a photo taken at a gig, and the lips had been covered in glue and silver glitter. I packed 2 bags that night and slept on my cousin's sofa with every light on. Sandra still goes to openings and still makes women feel crazy in corners. My friend eventually left her partner, but he still called Sandra lonely and complicated. I told him lonely does not steal keys, and complicated does not put glitter on a pillow. Last month, I saw her outside a private view with 2 men I knew and 1 girl I did not. The girl wore that careful smile women wear when they're trying not to seem difficult. Sandra leaned across her while talking, arm stretched over the table, body making a wall. I wanted to warn her, but my throat locked. I went home, checked the door, checked the windows, and found 3 silver flecks stuck to the sole of my shoe. Maybe I picked them up somewhere normal, because glitter gets everywhere and the world is filthy. Maybe she was there, or maybe she never needed to be there anymore. I sat on the floor until morning, holding my shoe in my lap, wondering how small revenge has to be before it becomes an invitation. Maybe like the glitter envelopes. Back in the before times when the internet was still a new thing with lots of potential, I was enrolled at my local junior college, working part-time in the administration building. A little into the semester, I moved in with my girlfriend so we could split bills, pass our classes, and stop wasting money on two shitty places. I will call her Lucy here because that is not her name. Lucy was better with people than I was, so when she invited a girl from one of her classes for game night, I dragged out the folding table and pretended I was social. We called a couple friends, made pasta, bought cheap snacks, and when the girl showed up, I realized I knew her from high school. Not close, but enough to remember she was decent. I will call her Sarah, and that first night was easy because we played cards, argued over dumb rules, watched half a movie, and laughed hard enough that the neighbor hit the wall. Sarah fit in without trying, and after that she came over a lot, sometimes for dinner, sometimes for movies, sometimes just to avoid campus for a while. It felt normal fast, so none of us noticed the trouble walking behind her. Then she brought Jay, her boyfriend, and the room changed before he did anything you could point at. He sat there like everyone had already disappointed him. He gave one-word answers, refused food, stared when Sarah laughed, and kept his arm around her in a way that looked less like affection than acclaim. We invited him again twice because polite people do stupid things to keep peace, but both nights sucked the air out of the apartment. After that, he stopped coming, and Sarah still came over. Only now she watched her phone and left when Jay called. A month or two later, Lucy's phone rang while we were cleaning up after dinner. I knew it was bad from her face. She told Sarah to come straight over. No stopping, no arguing, just drive. Sarah showed up maybe 20 minutes later, crying and embarrassed. She kept apologizing like she had ruined our night, instead of running from something. Jake had been waiting after class, already furious that she spent so much time at our place. He accused her of cheating, though she never said whether he meant with me, with Lucy, or both. He called her a whore, called her a lying bitch, blocked the door, and would not let her leave. When she tried to get past him, he shoved her back. She tripped over the coffee table and landed hard on her lower back. She kept saying he had never done that before. She kept saying it was probably an accident. People say that when the truth is too big to swallow. Lucy took her into the bathroom later, and when she came back, her face had gone cold. She told me the bruise was huge across Sarah's lower back and hip. I did not see it myself, and I am glad, because I was already seeing red. After Sarah fell asleep on our couch, Lucy and I argued in whispers. I wanted to go over there and beat the shit out of him. Lucy said I had never been in a real fight and was acting like a dumb hero. She was right. I said doing nothing was disgusting. She said making Sarah's life more dangerous was worse. Then Sarah moved under the blanket, and we shut up. I did not sleep much. I lay there listening to the refrigerator click on and off, thinking about him blocking the door and Sarah apologizing while hurt. I was a big guy, but I was not violent, not really. I had no useful way to protect anyone. Then I remembered my job, and the thought came in clean enough to scare me. At the school, student workers like me had access to records we had no business seeing. ID numbers, addresses, class schedules, fees, everything sat on those old systems because nobody had learned to fear data yet. Internet registration was not set up there, so students still used enrollment phones in the administration building. I knew Jay was a foreign student because Sarah had mentioned it once, and I knew he needed enough enrolled units to stay in the country. The last day to add or drop classes without penalty was coming up. For most students, that deadline was annoying. For him, it could be a trapdoor. At work the next day, I looked him up during a slow hour. His schedule came up like nothing. English on Tuesday, a math class, a lab, enough units to matter. A woman nearby ate yogurt and complained about toner while I stared at his semester and felt my anger turn into a plan. I waited until the last possible day, because I wanted him to have less time to catch it. The enrollment phones were in a side area, beige plastic things with cords twisted from nervous hands. I used his information, moved through the prompts, and dropped every class he had, one confirmation after another. My heart hammered at first, then it settled, and that calm still bothers me most. After I dropped the classes, I added every course I could find with a fee attached. Labs, materials, activities, anything that would stick money to his account and create a hold. If you owed the school, you could not get records or transcripts until it cleared. When I finished, I hung up the phone and stood there with my hand still on the receiver. No alarm sounded. Nobody rushed in. The building kept buzzing like I had only made a phone call. I told nobody, not Lucy, not Sarah, not even a friend who would have laughed and then maybe looked at me like I was dangerous. I went home and ate dinner while Sarah picked at her food. She had broken up with Jay, or at least she had said the words and stopped answering his calls. I wanted to tell her I had handled it. I wanted credit, and that makes me sick now. That Tuesday, Sarah had English, the class she still shared with him. She almost skipped, then got angry at herself for being scared. Lucy walked her across campus because none of us wanted her alone near him. I worked that morning and kept waiting for someone from records to call my name. Nobody called, and the system stayed quiet. Sarah came over later with this stunned look on her face. Jay had shown up to class, but so had someone new from the wait list, and there were not enough seats. The teacher checked the roll, and Jay was not on it. He argued that he had been there all semester. The teacher had the official roster, and official rosters do not give a damn about wounded pride. Someone else had taken his seat after I dropped him. Sarah said his face changed before he got loud, like his brain could not make the floor hold still. Then he argued harder, people stared, and the teacher told him to go to admissions. He left, and Sarah said she never saw him in that class again. Lucy said good, and I said nothing because my mouth had gone dry. A few days later, records started asking about a strange registration issue. Everyone laughed about old computers and bad phone systems. I laughed too, probably too loud, while my hand shook under the desk. That was when I understood I had not punched him. I had reached into the system and made the wall move. Weeks later, I checked Jay's schedule again, even though I knew I should not. The fee classes were gone, so someone had fixed that part, but he had no other classes listed. No units, no schedule, nothing that looked like a student still moving through the semester. I did not check his status. I did not want to know whether I had only inconvenienced him or blown a hole through his life. Lucy and I broke up later that year. Money, stress, immaturity, all the usual stuff, but that secret sat between us two. She never asked directly. I never confessed. Sarah drifted away after the breakup, and I only heard pieces later that she transferred, that she was okay, that she met better people. I hope all of that was true. Sometimes I worry I was too harsh, and sometimes I know I was. Then I remember Sarah on our couch, hurt and apologizing, trying to protect the guy who shoved her because saying the truth out loud would have made it real. Maybe he deserved it. Maybe he deserved worse. Maybe he fixed everything and became someone else's problem. I do not know, and I have never looked hard enough to find out. Either way, Sarah did not have to sit beside him in that class again, and for a while our couch gave her a place to sleep where nobody blocked the door. Mess with me, but not my friends. I had a neighbor on the left side of my little rental house, back when I worked warehouse maintenance and counted every dollar before spending it. I rented that place because the yard was small, the rent was low, and my plan was simple. Fill the 5-gallon gas can Friday, most Saturday morning, shove the mower under the lean-to, and leave the can on the back patio where it had always sat. The guy next door looked normal from the street, which made it worse later. He had the ball cap, the beer, the porch chair, and that habit of watching everything that moved. He watched mailboxes, trash cans, cars pulling in, and kids cutting between yards like the whole block owed him something. The gas can thing started so stupid that I treated it like my mistake. I would fill at the station, mow once, and the next weekend the can would feel almost empty. My mower had a tiny tank, barely more than a quart, and that machine did not burn 5 gallons in one afternoon. I checked for leaks, sniffed the patio, tightened the cap, and blamed myself because nobody wants to believe their neighbor is creeping behind their house. After the 4th time, I stopped pretending this was some dumb mistake. The can came back to the same spot, but the handle faced a different way. Somebody was taking what they wanted and returning the evidence because they thought I was too dumb to notice. This was before cheap cameras were everywhere, so I aimed an old laptop webcam through the laundry room window, left the gas can in frame like bait, and went to work feeling ridiculous. When I got home, the laptop had saved 7 clips, and 6 of them showed leaves moving. The last one showed him coming into my yard 5 minutes after I backed out of the driveway. He walked past my kitchen window, grabbed my gas can, and carried it toward his garage like it belonged to him. 20 minutes later, he brought it back and wiped his hand on his shorts. I watched that clip until my anger turned cold in my chest. The stolen gas pissed me off, but the comfort of it scared me more. He knew my schedule, knew where I kept things, knew I had no fence, and knew I probably would not want a war with a man living 10 yards away. He was loud, drunk most evenings, and twice as wide as me. The kind of man who screams at an old woman because her grandson parks near his mailbox. For a week, I moved the kin inside, which should have fixed everything, but it made me feel worse. Every locked door made me picture him coming through the yard and looking in my windows instead. Then my shed door got pulled half open on a Thursday night, and I went out barefoot with a flashlight and a hammer from under the sink. The hasp was bent, the lock still hung there, and his porch light clicked off while I stood there. I did not see him, so I could not prove it, but that little click told me enough. That was when I stopped being decent about the whole thing. I carried the gas can into the bathroom, poured the last splash of fuel into my car, and left enough fumes inside to keep the smell. Then every time I had to piss, I pissed in that can. Morning piss, work piss, angry half-asleep piss, all of it went through the spout. It stank like fuel and human waste had cooked together in a closed garage. By Friday, the can felt heavy enough to fool him. I put it back on the patio and staged the dumbest performance of my life. I popped my hood, threw 2 duffel bags into the trunk, carried out a cooler, and made sure he saw me moving like I was leaving for the weekend. He sat on his porch pretending not to watch, but his head kept turning every time I crossed the driveway. I almost lost my nerve before backing out of the driveway. I pictured him pouring that mess into his mower, then pictured him figuring it out and showing up drunk at my door. I remember the shed door, the video, and the way he walked through my yard without shame. Then I drove away anyway, because being scared had gotten fucking exhausting. The funny part, if there is one, is my car actually started acting up 2 miles later. The battery light came on, the belt screamed, and the dashboard seemed to beg me not to be stupid. I pulled into a gas station, cursed at the engine, and decided not to risk the highway. So I turned around and limped back home less than an hour after leaving. When I rolled onto our street, he was in his front yard fighting his lawnmower. He had 1 foot braced on the deck and both hands on the pull cord, yanking so hard his shoulders snapped backward. The mower coughed once, spat a wet choke, and died. He yanked again, kicked the side, and bent over breathing hard. His face had gone that dangerous red people get before they throw something through glass. I parked in my driveway and stayed behind the wheel. He looked over and saw me, and his face changed fast. Confusion came first because I was supposed to be gone. Guilt flashed next for half a second across his stupid face. Then came rage, plain and ugly, and I felt it through the windshield. He dragged the mower toward his garage like the machine had betrayed him. I went inside, locked the door, and stood there listening. 20 minutes later, his car started, and it sounded wrong immediately, rough and uneven, coughing through the quiet street. He backed out too fast, bumped the curb, and rolled away with the engine bucking under him. I listened from behind the blinds until the sound faded, then heard one final sputter a couple blocks over. I checked the gas can on the patio with my stomach tight. It was empty in a way that made my hands go cold. Not low, not suspicious, not half-used, but completely fucking empty. He had taken every drop of that piss soup and fed it into his mower in his car. For maybe 3 seconds, I felt like I had actually won. Then the fear came back because a man like that does not learn his lesson and go think about his choices. He came to my door that evening and hit it hard enough to rattle the frame. I did not open it because his voice already sounded half gone. He called me every name he knew, said I ruined his mower, said his car was dead, said I owed him money. I told him through the door that I had video of him stealing from my yard. He got quiet long enough for me to hear him breathe, then said I better sleep light. That was when the whole thing stopped being funny to me. I set the laptop back up and kept a hammer beside my bed. Around 2 in the morning, the motion software caught him near my laundry room window with a flashlight pointed down along the wall. He did not touch the glass, but he stood there too long for any innocent reason. I called the cops, showed them the clip, and watched them take notes like they had seen this kind of asshole before. They knocked on his door, but he did not answer. The next few days got meaner in a way I still hate remembering. Someone poured old paint into my trash bin while I was at work. Someone left roofing nails behind my back tire in the driveway. Someone shoved a dead squirrel into my mailbox, and I found it by touch before I saw it. My girlfriend stopped staying over after that, and I did not blame her. I started looking him up because anger needs somewhere to go. I found his full name on an old neighborhood flyer he had made about stolen recycling bins, because of course the thief wanted everyone else to respect property. County records showed missed court dates, a domestic charge, theft, and an active warrant that made my mouth go dry. I called the sheriff's office, asked careful questions, and the woman's careful voice told me plenty. That was when I found the sheriff's ride-along application. Regular citizens could apply online, and the office would run their name before approving them. I filled it out with his name, his address, and his phone number from the recycling flyer. I did not add drama or lies because I did not need to. I just submitted him to a process that would force someone to run his name. 2 mornings later, before sunrise, I heard cars stopping outside. I looked through the blinds and saw deputies walking up his driveway. He opened the door in pajama pants, saw them, and tried to step back inside. One deputy caught his wrist before the door closed, and the porch turned into elbows, bare feet, and that same angry voice I knew too well. He fought just enough to make it ugly for everyone watching. His wife stood behind the screen door with her hands near her mouth, and for the first time I wondered what else had happened inside that house. The deputies cuffed him and walked him down the steps while he yelled about harassment and people minding their own business. His head turned toward my house before they put him in the cruiser, and I stepped back from the blinds even though he probably could not see me. After that, the street got quiet in a way that did not feel peaceful. His mower sat dead by the garage under a ripped tarp, and his car vanished on a tow truck a few days later. I scrubbed the mailbox with bleach until my hands burned, replaced the shed latch, and kept the webcam running long after there was nothing left to record. People laugh when I tell the short version because a thief stealing gas and getting a tank full of piss sounds funny. The part that stayed with me was not the revenge, though. It was how fast a boring rental house turned into cameras, threats, dead animals, and a hammer beside my pillow. I moved out 3 months later, even though the landlord offered to cut the rent. Before I left, I took the gas can to the dump and threw it away without looking back. Also, I just wanted to add this guy was a huge piece of crap. That's not the only thing he did. I found out he had arrest warrants sitting there waiting for him. So I ended up getting him arrested by applying for a sheriff's ride-along program in his name. This is a very old revenge from when I was a teenager in the 90s. I was a computer kid before that meant anything cool, just a boy with a beige tower, a shoebox of floppies, and parents who thought every game cost too much. There was no useful internet where I lived, so new games came through airmail, foreign shops, cousins, and luck. Me and a friend bought originals from abroad, copied whatever the protection allowed, and traded manuals like passports. Our plan was simple before anything ugly happened. Share games, save money, and keep playing without going broke. A new kid joined our class and said his uncle had shelves full of PC games. We lent him Doom 2, The Settlers, Monkey Island, and a few others I had paid for with birthday money. He promised working copies the next week, smiling like the deal was already settled. The first discs he gave us were corrupt in a way nobody could blame on chance. The drive clicked, the install crashed, and the whole thing died before the first screen. He blamed our computer, then brought another batch without the manual, which meant the copy protection blocked us anyway. We should have stopped, but greedy teenagers are easy to fool. We kept lending him games because we wanted to believe the next trade would work. Our originals came back with bent boxes, dirty manuals, crushed corners, and one floppy shutter forced open with something sharp. My friend wanted to hit him behind the gym, but I wanted something worse than a punch. I wanted him scared, embarrassed, and trapped with something he could not laugh off. He also mocked me for liking Queen, which mattered more than it should have. Freddie Mercury had died a few years earlier, and AIDS was still everywhere in posters, television campaigns, church whispers, and grown-up fear. The new kid called Freddie a gay singer with a smirk that made my hands shake. His family was strict, conservative, very Catholic, and everyone knew his father treated shame like a family emergency. Our class had to attend an AIDS awareness event organized by a foundation. They showed a video and talked about HIV, condoms, homosexuality, fear, and safe sex. The new kid made faces whenever they mentioned gay men, like hearing it might contaminate him. At the end, they handed out flyers, and there was a bowl of free condoms with the foundation logo on the wrappers. Me and my friend took more than we needed, and the idea came before either of us said it properly. I had an inkjet printer at home, which made me dangerous in a very specific teenage way. That weekend, my friend came over with the flyers hidden in a school bag. We copied the foundation logo as well as two dumb kids could, wasting paper until the header looked official enough. Then we wrote a fake letter that sounded calm and adult. The letter thanked him for writing after the school event. It said they understood how difficult it could be to be open about being homosexual. It said they enclosed information and condoms and reminded him to practice safe sex. We folded the flyers, slipped in the condoms, and sealed the envelope. The cruel part was addressing it to Mr. with his last name because we wanted his father to open it first. I knew that was nasty even then, but I called it clever because clever felt easier. Dropping in the mailbox did not feel as funny as I expected. My friend laughed, but it sounded thin, and the red box swallowed the envelope like it had been waiting. We walked home telling each other he deserved it because of the stolen games, the broken discs, and the Freddie jokes. That is how you lie to yourself when you already know you cross a line. He was absent Monday, and his empty chair gave us the first proof. On Tuesday, the new kid came in late with messy hair and his shirt buttoned wrong. He did not brag, joke, or turn around to bother anyone. He sat down, stared at his desk, and flinched when the teacher said his name. I felt victory first, not guilt, and that still bothers me. The rumors reached us before lunch because school gossip moves faster than sense. His father had opened the envelope at breakfast, and the condoms had fallen onto the table beside the fake letter. His mother cried, screamed, and prayed, according to the girl who lived near them. His father accused him of lying, hiding, and humiliating the family. The kid denied everything, which only made them more convinced. By Friday, he looked smaller, and that changed the taste of it. Once his sleeve rode up, and I saw finger marks on his arm going yellow at the edges. He cornered us after gym near the lockers, where the floor smelled like bleach and wet socks. He asked if we had written to the foundation in his name. At first he thought the letter was real, which somehow made it worse, because he believed some adult office had a file with his name on it. My friend denied it too loudly, and I tried to look confused, but fear always showed on my face. The new kid watched me instead of him, and I knew he had found a crack. He shoved my friend into the lockers hard enough to bring a teacher running. He shouted that we had ruined his life, not pranked him, not embarrassed him, but ruined it. That word followed us straight to the principal's office. By lunchtime, the envelope and our fake letter sat on the desk under those dead office lights. His parents came in later, and the room stopped feeling like school trouble. His mother held a tissue and kept twisting it until it tore into pieces. His father stood behind her and would not sit down. The principal asked about the printer, the logo, the condoms, the event, and the wording. We lied for maybe 5 minutes before everything fell apart. I remember saying we made it up, printed it ourselves, and addressed it that way on purpose. His father called us sick little bastards, and nobody corrected him. His mother made a broken sound that still sits somewhere in my head. The new kid stared at the floor like he had left his body somewhere else. The principal asked why we did it, and the truth sounded pathetic once it left our mouths. We said he stole our games, gave us corrupt discs, damaged our originals, and mocked me for liking Queen. Those reasons had felt huge in my bedroom, but in that office they sounded like children throwing stones into a burning house. We got detention, apology letters, lectures, and parents called in. My parents were furious in the quiet way that makes you wish they would yell. The new kid stopped trading games, stopped bragging about his uncle, and stopped making jokes about Freddie Mercury. He also stopped looking people in the eye for a while, and that never felt as satisfying as I expected. I wrote the forced apology, handed it over, and avoided him until the year ended. I still do not know what happened to him later. Maybe he forgot most of it, or maybe he remembers every damn second. We wanted revenge for stolen games and damaged discs, but we chose the dirtiest pressure point in his house. Back then, AIDS was panic, sin, sex, death, gossip, and family shame packed into one envelope. We used that because we knew exactly what it would do. I remember the games, but I remember the envelope more. I remember the mailbox flap, the empty chair, the crooked letter on the principal's desk, and his mother shredding that tissue in her hands. The revenge worked so well that it stopped being funny before we were ready to stop laughing. It's still the best revenge I ever took in my life, even though it was 30 years ago. Once upon the before time in 2015, I worked my way through nursing school as a waitress in a restaurant. This restaurant did not advertise. They prided themselves on word of mouth for their popularity. This is important. I had been there for several months at this point, and had proved myself reliable and knowledgeable enough to help train new waiters. Not technically a trainer, but could be relied upon to support new workers once the trainer set them loose. We had one older guy who had just been released. He was a little awkward, a little shy, and worried about mistakes, absolutely expected, and he was great to work with. On the night of our tale, he was in the section next to mine, easy to keep an eye on, and easy to hop in and prop him up when he hit the weeds. This was his first night with his own complete section. Weeds would abound. I was ready. What he wasn't ready for was his first demanding round table of about 6 people, 20-somethings with attitude. He came to me worried and confused. They want XYZ, but I don't think that's on our menu, right? She says we have the ingredients and just make it, that the other location makes it all the time. Yes, I could have taught him to stand his ground, but nerves and first night with your own section isn't the time for this to go over well. So I told him ask the back line and see if they were willing. If not, I would talk to the table. Cooks were fine with it. Basically a wrap if I remember correctly. So no problem. From our end, this was apparently the cue for the leader of the table to demand something every time he came to the table. As soon as he brought the last requested item, she needed something else. I thought it was possible and had been keeping an eye on him. Seeing his panicked face, I gave him a nod and started checking in on his other tables, slotting them into my own table cycles. Reasons I'm paired with him. This carried on for their entire meal, incredibly needy and demanding his full attention with zero apology or kindness. I made sure to catch him in the back to prepare for possibly getting no tip, but to calm the panic, and to remind him I would not be touching the tips from his other tables. Honestly, this poor guy looked like he was about to quit on the spot. This leader was rude and impatient and gave him no space to breathe. I was his emotional support animal at this point, but knowing he was at least twice my age made it even worse for him. The table had come in close to the end of the night and ended up staying past our section's closing, so they were the last table on our side of the restaurant. Perks of closing with a new waiter, getting cut early. That's when he came to me asking how to do an employee discount, and they wanted to use more than one on a single ticket. Was that okay? I was confused. Wait, employee? That's when he shared that she had spent the entire meal berating and making fun of him because one, she was a trainer at our other location, and two, he was the worst waiter she had ever seen. No wonder the other location made her special meals, and zero surprise, he was such a wreck. On top of that, she was claiming there were multiple birthdays in the group, so free cakes all around, and she wants the birthday song immediately. To say I was livid is saying lava is warm. I was ready to throw hands for this poor man. Instead, I told him to prep the cakes, but don't go out yet. I would get the boss about employee discount. Not needed. We could do it ourselves, but this was such a special case. And I would gather the workers for the birthday song. Managers there were absolutely amazing. We loved each one, and all of them had our backs, very rare in restaurants. So this one was the best part. I gave the front-end boss a quick rundown of the table's antics. Remember the word-of-mouth restaurant mentality? Yeah, boss was not having a restaurant employee acting so cruelly. Even if she wasn't his employee, I asked permission for what I wanted to do. He smiled and gave permission as he grabbed the employee numbers given for the discounts, which that trainer would have known could not be stacked, and told me he had a boss-to-boss phone call to make. I then ran to every employee I could grab. Remember, half the restaurant was closing down, so we had several people available, including a dishwasher, and gave them each the fastest explanation of the table and the plan. And then I told the poor, nerve-wracked server that we were ready to drop cakes. The crowd that arrived to that 6-person tabletop was honestly the largest we had ever had for a birthday song, and I'm pretty confident the largest that restaurant will ever have. We served free cakes in front of every seat, and leader had the most self-satisfied smirk as we all grinned ecstatically and lined up to sing. And oh, did we sing? We all sang that birthday song as loud as possible. Please do recall they were the last table in the section, and for your imaginings, I should mention this table was in the corner as well. So while we were screaming the birthday song, it was bouncing back from that corner as well, and it was an excruciatingly long song. Their smiles dropped immediately, and hands covered their ears as they jumped with the audio onslaught. I know it hurt my ears, and that pain is something that still makes me smile to this day. We all stood there, giant group, happily screaming our restaurant's special happy birthday song, and it still warms my heart a decade later. More than that, while we were gathering and planning and destroying eardrums, our boss was making phone calls in the office. Yes, he called our restaurant manager and informed them of her behavior. And no, she didn't get stacked employee discounts. She didn't get her discount at all. I know, because I was there when she was handed the phone from my front-end manager at the host desk, and when she started to cry and try to make her excuses for why she shouldn't be fired. But the general manager, one step below owner, since this was a small company with very few locations, had already been called, her employee number had been shared, and she was done. I'm not psychic. She could have gone back to her home location and convinced someone to hire her back. Anything is possible. But I know how she treated this poor guy. I know how I told the tale to my boss, and I know the quiet rage he so rarely touched when it was rage. I would have almost given up joining in that screaming song to be able to hear those phone calls.